I was asked by Richard Quest of CNN to say what I thought 2025 would look like in one day, in 1 year. And I looked at already a whiteboard filled with many adjectives, quite gloomy, I would say, as to what 2025 would look like in one word. And I chose to put two words instead, which are realistic optimism. Realistic because I think we should not be blind to the challenges that our businesses and our professionals face. But at the same time, no matter how difficult the context we are living in at the moment, from all aspects, I think in spite of all that, I think that we know we still have the resources, we still have the talent, and we still have the capacity to lead in the global race. And I think that with a change of mindset, even against the background of what the panel we've just heard in a way concluded, with the political courage to take the decisions that we know are necessary today, I don't think it is so difficult to get there. Because if we look at how we build our country's digital backbone, how we've built it, where we are today, how we've grown as a country, 21 years from membership of the European Union, in terms of economic impact, in terms of diversity, in terms of spillover from investment and turnover that we can also push abroad. But nowhere is a shift so necessary in how we approach things than when we approach digitalization and technology. So in the same event that I just mentioned in January, it was at the World Economic Forum, one person described the age that we are living in, referring specifically to artificial intelligence, as akin to the revolution that took place in the 19th century, when we moved from agriculture to industrialization. It is that big, it is that transformative, it is that critical, and it is already happening. People have legitimate concerns about artificial intelligence. I don't think that I go to a place of work or to university, or young people in particular, who tell me we feel that we are approaching artificial intelligence in this continent much more differently to other continents. We look at it from a regulation point of view, from a limiting point of view, when at the end of the day, artificial intelligence will change the way the world as we know it is. And that's why we took the very difficult decision during last mandate of the European Parliament to adopt the world's first comprehensive Artificial Intelligence Act. It was incredibly hard. The resistance was huge at all steps, at the consultation phase, at the preparation phase, at publication, at negotiation, until the very last hours of the negotiation, early morning. Before there was an agreement between the Parliament and the Council, there were people in the room saying this is not going to be possible. But we were convinced that we need a piece of legislation that can find a balance between, on the one hand, safety, because as I said, when we say that it will change the way everything works, it will change the way we learn, it will change the way our health system works, the way all jobs as we know them are, and we need to be prepared for that. We cannot wait until we find ourselves with big redundancies in our labour market. And I think we cannot keep shying away from what feels uncomfortable or unorthodox and then be surprised when we miss out on the very opportunities with the potential to move us forward. Out of all PhDs in artificial intelligence that we have in Europe, only 19% of them stay. The rest we lose to other continents. That's a number that we need, particularly in this context, to be incredibly careful about. The Mario Draghi report on the future of European competitiveness shed a little bit of light on the growing innovation gap between Europe and the rest of the world. So take the United States, for example. Between 2019 and 2024, labour productivity per hour worked went up by almost 7%. In the euro area, less than 1%. And the divergence is even wider in areas like market services, professional services, and the industry. Artificial intelligence can bridge this gap, a reality that is particularly true for our islands. We need a fresh industrial policy, one that brings AI into the picture at the very centre of the decisions that we take and focuses on the skills that people actually need today. I just spent 2.5 days in Italy, where the one common statement that was made across most of the northern Italian regions that I met and I visited was that we shouldn't just be trying to keep up. On the contrary, we need to be aiming at becoming top destinations for investment. Now, how do we get there? How do we return to that? Or how do we keep what we have? The kind of investment should be one that doesn't just benefit the big players, but that also opens doors for small businesses. Job creation remains the number one aspect, request, demand that anyone, whether we are elected, I see Graham Bencini here, in the national parliament or in the European Parliament, we're asked of. The very basic, how am I going to ensure that I have a job that gives me dignity and that I can live a good life and pay the bills with? That's the way forward. We're not responding properly to that question. We haven't, in fairness, for a long time. We also need to make sure that our foundations are strong. So when we talk to leading entrepreneurs, as you are, to seasoned professionals, so many familiar faces in the room today, I think that one of the best things you could do and that you do is that you open up your places of work for visits. I've had the chance to visit quite a lot of you, of your employees, of your very enthusiastic workforce. It's something that I try to do across the European Union in places where there is the same questions, the same demands, the same concerns that I just mentioned. And let me tell you, I remain convinced very deeply that nobody understands the need of businesses better than you. I'm not going to be telling you what to do. It is my job for you to tell me what you think I should do. And then I have to deliver. It's my responsibility. That's what we were elected for. The messages here in Malta were heard a little bit now, but also more comprehensively. They worry me. Decisions are endlessly delayed by governmental agencies. Many shared stories of being sent in circles by departments whose authorities duplicate work, and therefore no decision is ever out. Too many spend too much time in box-ticking exercises that offer little to zero added value. There is an argument that this could be also an EU reason, but it's not always the case, to be very clear. I push back quite strongly against that. Too many numbers show us, for example, EU-wide data, that, for example, 1/3 of SMEs allocate over 10% of their staff to manage regulatory compliance. I visited a car factory, a car manufacturer, 2 days ago. They employ essentially only engineers. 30% of them do compliance. Engineers in an automotive industry that is seeking to be the most innovative in the world. That is more time, more talent, and ultimately more money spent on paperwork, and less time, less talent, and less money spent on the implementation of ideas, of being courageous, of being innovative, of being able to dream. And I think, if we all agree on one thing, it would be that, our best days are ahead of us. And I think that we are in a position where we can do much, much more. First of all, to streamline legislation, to cut unnecessary red tape, to make laws clearer and easier to implement. That means making it possible for entrepreneurs to turn an idea into a business easily, not painfully, to find investment if you don't have capital to begin with, to be able to fail and to begin again and again. When compared to other continents, we lag far behind in the sense of entrepreneurialism. And in this country as well. I know you have another panel today on access to finance for economic growth. We all know how crucial private investment is and how we can only unlock its full potential by completing the capital markets and banking union. We've been asking for this for decades. It's frankly been blocked by a number of countries, not only the larger ones, but a number of smaller ones. But the reality is that today we have, and we celebrate, 31 years of a single market, but as Enrico Letta said, we have 27 single markets in the European Union. We are not making it easy for funds, capital, ideas to move from one country to another. We only are good at reintroducing internal borders, and when we actually remove them, we immediately forget. So I think that we should refocus on the capability of the private sector, on how to get things done, on how to build, how to innovate, and then our role will be to implement your ideas and make sure that you can do them easily. What are we doing in the European Parliament? So I've been a member of the European Parliament since 2013. I became president three years and a half ago, and I had to be honest, this is an institution that is not a very agile one. This is an institution, just like others, that hides behind layers and layers of bureaucracy and decision makers and finger pointing. And if there's one thing that I did not want, is to continue this endless, and those of you who are based in Brussels know this, endless blaming of, no, it wasn't us, it was the governments. Or no, the proposal came badly from the Commission in the first place. Or the consultation was not good enough, we need an impact assessment. We adopted 13,000 pages of legislation last mandate. The Congress, same time, 5,000. Most of the subjects we dealt with were the same, whether it was on foreign affairs, whether it was on capital markets, whether it was on chips, whether it was on digital technologies, anything. Environment, similar. Takes us longer, and we are not able to complete legislation in a way that we can be proud of it at the end. And then we spend years wondering, national court processes, asking for interpretation. To give you an example, we are expecting hundreds of delegated acts on hydrogen to come to us. Hundreds, we haven't had that. But this will essentially be on a decision as to whether we have hydrogen in Europe or not. Crucial. How can I face my voters in 2029 when I say, actually, it took too long, our processes were too difficult, and you have to wait a little bit? I cannot do that, and I will not. So what we did over the past 2.5 years is we completely reformed how we do decisions in the European Parliament. What used to take 9 months, we shortened to 4 hours. How did we do it? That we streamlined the decisions, made sure we protect our institutional prerogative, our responsibilities as a legislator, but also being aware that if the world is going super fast, then so should we. So when it came to the decisions a couple of weeks ago, in essence we can't use the word roll back, but I would say with resolve to use our urgency procedure, which we can do within days, in order to delay the entry into force of CSRD and CSDDD, so sustainability reporting and due diligence requirements. For all those countries that had not yet implemented it, this is good news. But we have some countries that had already. So the question that comes to us is, as you mentioned, is that those 90 data points, will they be part of the regulatory form for 2026, 2027, or are we also going to delay that? And if there's one message that we should have gotten is that you need predictability. You cannot advise your clients to do this, this and this, only for you to be told, okay, now the political system has changed. Those same prime ministers and presidents that told us we're going to go ahead so fast, 6 months later going, actually, you know what? Reverse. Reverse. I mean, if we look at the position to France and Germany, that is exactly what has been declared, that these proposals, not to mention combustion engine, entry into force, ETS, etc., should not be entered into force. Now, we will see what happens in the Parliament. This is where our job as legislators comes through. But the message was loud and clear. If we, from the pro-European, centrist majority in the European Parliament, are not going to address those very basic requests of our citizens asked us across the board last June, then we are going to lose support to the fringes. And if we lose support to the fringes, then nothing will happen. No multi-annual financial framework will be negotiated. What will happen to the common agricultural policy? What will happen to Erasmus, Horizon, our huge research innovation funds that we need to keep to attract those AI professionals that we've lost over the years back because they have a home in Europe, they might no longer have a home elsewhere. Do I need to keep the time? I'm just bleeping. Sorry. Okay. Okay, sorry. So I go back to, I diverged a bit from my papers. So focus on speed and efficiency. This should not stop, of course, at legislation. So I've just mentioned a few instruments like CSRD, CSDDD. The next packages will be wastewater, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, very difficult, very ideological. My appeal is that in Malta we can unite on this in making it easier for you to be able to implement the very difficult regulations that we adopted on ourselves, together with the Maltese government, and therefore we should all take responsibility. Like that we can remain competitive. We need a real discussion as to how raw materials are going to arrive faster. We are fully dependent on externalities here, both geopolitical but also economic, tariffs, transatlantic relations. Right now, because of limited connectivity, this is forcing us to over-import and to stockpile. And this is just to stay ahead of delays. But to do that, you need to have the financial capacity to do it. And if you're a small country, you are being driven out of business. So I think I just gave you a little bit of thoughts that I could have condensed, but anyway, I threw them out there, is that I think this is the mindset that must carry us forward. I think with pride and with confidence, we can get there. Not out of blind hope, but out of being optimistic and being grounded in reality. I think that reality is grounded in our people, our businesses, our entrepreneurs, our innovators, who, even in the toughest of circumstances, consistently transform challenges into opportunities. At the end of the day, there is no limit to how far we can go for our Malta, for Gozo, and for our Europe. Thank you.